David Weaver, Megan Wall, and Tom Pop. Securities offered through HD Vest Investment Services, member SIPC. Advisory services offered through HD Vest Advisory Services, 6333 North State Highway 161, 4th floor, Irving, Texas, 75038, 972-870-6000. SWC Wealth Management is not a registered broker-dealer or independent investment advisory firm. It's now time for User-Friendly Finance with Dave Weaver from SWC Wealth Management on News Radio, WHP 580. If you have a question for Dave, call 540-0580. Now with today's show, here's Dave Weaver.
Hi, good morning. This is Dave Weaver with SWC Wealth Management, bringing you another edition of User-Friendly Finance. Today we're going to talk about the process that we go through to try to gather information to do a financial plan. Excuse me. Joining me today is Megan Wall.
Good morning.
Hi, Megan. Thanks for coming along today. And Megan is the person that actually does a lot of our financial plans inside our group. But SWC Wealth Management, we'll just talk for a minute. SWC Wealth Management is a full-service financial planning firm. We have two offices. We're located in Palmyra at 103 West Main Street, and in Carlisle, we're located at 35 East High Street. I'm typically in the Palmyra office most of the time, and then a day or two a week in Carlisle. Megan and Tom, who was with us last week when we talked about RMDs, they're both typically in the Carlisle office, but in Palmyra a day or two a week. You can reach either office at 706-0700, or you can reach the Carlisle office directly at 717-249-0453. And the services that we provide are the full range of financial planning services that you'll find at a financial planning firm. Hopefully, if you don't have a financial advisor, you've considered it and have started the process of at least thinking about it and thinking about your own personal financial future. Regardless of your age, you want to have some kind of a plan. But we help people put together plans to do retirement planning. Estate planning is a whole different line of planning or different aspects of planning, college planning, tax planning. We help people look at their 401ks and help evaluate the positions they have within their 401ks, help people with rollovers if they've got existing plans or old IRAs that they want to roll into a new IRA or consolidate. A lot of people in today's world end up working multiple jobs with multiple retirement plans that they'll consolidate and try to get in one place rather than try to keep track of multiples. We also help people with different aspects of insurance. We typically don't do health care. I started doing that when I first started in business, and I found that people got very sour on health care, so I've never really offered as in conjunction with the financial planning because health care, as we all know, the prices are going up. You'll get in with a lower rate, and then the next year your rate went up 30 or 40%, and people got soured on their investments by the fact that their health care was going up. We couldn't really control it. You end up looking for another company, but people were generally across the board, I think people are unhappy with the cost of healthcare and the rising cost of healthcare. So we kind of stayed away from that. But we do life insurance planning. We do annuities, both variable and equity indexed annuities. So that's kind of the range of services that we provide. Anything I missed in there, Megan?
I don't think so.
You think that was it? Okay. Yeah, and any one of those, we have a full line of detail. One of the things that Tom and I have talked about, and Tom was the one who was here last week, like I said, when we talked about RMDs. Hopefully, if you have to take RMDs and you're over 70 and a half and you haven't taken yours yet, that you last week's show was enough to try to convince you that you need to do something with your RMDs because you have until December 31st. It's not something that extends to the tax deadline. So by December 31st, you have to take your RMD, or it's a 50% penalty, probably the most onerous penalty that the IRS, one of the most onerous penalties that the IRS imposes. So,
And some companies say you need to have your paperwork in by December 15th in order for it to be processed before the end of the year. So you definitely want to start thinking now if you haven't already done it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We didn't touch on that last week, but a lot of companies get bogged down at the end of the year because people do forget RMDs. A lot of people are doing tax loss harvesting, similar to what we do in our practice.
So you want to make sure that you get that paperwork taken care of and get it in as fast as you can. That way you make sure that you make your deadline.
Yeah, I don't think I'm really sick, but I purely have a cough. So I'll try to watch that as we go through the show. So,
all right. So when we are Do you want to talk about the market first, or?
No, we decided a couple weeks ago, Megan, that we're not going to talk about the market anymore.
Okay.
That we're going to have people look at their own personal plans. And the reason we did that was because we wanted to try to get the shows focused on one subject so that as people down the road, if they want to go back and revisit a subject like RMDs as an example,
they can look at the podcast.
Yeah, they can go pull up the podcast and be able to look in and find that. We're going to have it start to try to have it on the WHP website. It'll be indexed by date, but on our own company website, we're going to try to index that by subject. So if you have any questions, you can on a specific job, you can go back and actually listen to the shows.
Okay.
So.
And with that, our website is swcwealth.com, and you can always email us if you have any other questions at swcwealth@gmail.com.
Okay, thanks a lot. So I guess with that, we'll go ahead and start talking about our subject for the day, which is going to be some of the information you gather for when you go to do a financial plan. In our practice, we try to get an understanding of what people are actually looking for before we start the plan, and that might be trying to do like a blue sky look at what you think your retirement's going to look like if you're doing retirement planning. And I guess this conversation will be geared more towards when we talk about a financial plan. There are many aspects to it, but one of the ones that's integral to a lot of people's planning is their retirement plan. So we'll start out by just talking about where people have worked, what their expectations are in their job, and then we usually try to spend a fair amount of time trying to have people define what the retirement is that they want to have. Not necessarily, and maybe a bucket list. If you have a bucket list that you want to do in retirement, and if you don't have one, maybe consider one. Mm-hmm. I just had a conversation last week with somebody where nobody in their early 20s or 30s sits back and thinks about retirement, because retirement's a long way away. But when you sit back and think about retirement, nobody in their 20s and 30s says, man, I wish I can get to be 65 or 66, retire and sit around and watch TV all day. That's not the retirement you plan as you're going through your whole work career, and it's probably not the one you want to have when you actually are living in your retirement.
So how do you want to spend that time?
Yeah, so how do you want to spend your time? And for everybody, it's a little bit different. Some people have very simple needs, very simple lifestyles. Other people want to travel the world. Other people want to buy a house at the beach. Some people want to buy a boat. Some people just want to, plug along and, have hobbies, whether it's woodworking or crafts or
fishing.
painting.
We got some great fishers in our practice.
Fishing, golfing, all the things that, maybe you've thought about your whole life and you worked your whole life to try to accomplish. Try to have a plan in place that'll support that, whether both financially and from a philosophical concept, so that you think about your retirement and put a plan in place that will actually help you achieve that. So some of the first things we look at are, first of all, we sit down with people, try to get a definition of what they want that retirement to look like. And it could be, for some people, it'll be 20 years in the future. For some people, it'll be 5 years in the future. For other people, they've just got rollover paperwork. Or they've just got rollover paperwork and they don't know what to do. They're planning on, their company either had a layoff, or they just on the spur of the moment got mad at work or decided they wanted to retire. We have all kinds of different meetings, and everybody's in a different position, and everybody has their own definition for retirement.
Mm-hmm. And that's why all of these conversations are so important, because someone can come into our office and say, okay, I have $100,000. What's the best thing to do with it? And there's no correct answer for that. We have to figure out, first of all, what your goals are and what you want that money to do, when you want to use it. There's a lot more digging that we have to do before we can actually give you a recommendation.
I think the two most common bad starts to that conversation are, I have $200,000. Is that enough to retire? And that's the only question, without any other definition of what they need. The other is, how much is a perfect retirement? Is it $1 million? Is it $2 million? I read somewhere where it's $1.5 million. Those kind of questions. Anyway, that's the discussion we're going to have as we go through the show today. If you have any questions during the show, give us a call at 717-540-0580 or 800-724-5801, and we'll give you a Panera's gift card and a $10 Panera's gift card for calling in and trying to get on the show. This is Dave Weaver and Megan Wall with User Friendly Finance and SWC Wealth Management. Hi, this is Dave Weaver again and Megan Wall with User Friendly Finance from SWC Wealth Management. And today we're going to talk about the financial planning process that we use. part of what we do and part of the definition of what you want to do in retirement or just in your financial life in general is really key to this whole process. And people, I don't think, spend enough time in it. If you sometimes if you go and meet with a financial advisor, they're very interested in getting your assets, not necessarily as interested in doing a plan for you or making sure that the plan you have is something that works for you and not something that works for them or just makes them money. You want a financial planner that you're comfortable with. You can lay out your goals and aspirations and your dreams, and the financial advisor becomes a very intimate part of your life. Most people aren't going around sharing their financial information with other people, and the step of taking it to someone and showing them and bearing your soul to your finances is a very intimate process. So we find ourselves doing a lot of counseling and
coaching
and helping people with some of the financial decisions which happen to impact a lot of other aspects in your life. And the thing that makes it difficult sometimes is when you sit down with a married couple. One of the things that's very important about these meetings and the initial upfront work that you have to do is a lot of times couples aren't necessarily in sync, or they thought they were in sync. When they sit down and actually discuss what it is they want to do in retirement, maybe they're not in sync.
And sometimes those conversations are very, very constructive. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing for you and your partner to have some different ideas about money. Some of the reason that's why you're so successful together. But you do want to make sure that you guys understand each other and you're working together towards a common goal.
Yeah, a good example of good friends of mine, husband and wife, and the husband's dream of retirement was to get a Winnebago and drive around the country and not have a permanent address. And the wife absolutely wanted a permanent address, and she didn't really want to drive around the country in a Winnebago.
That's a pretty big difference.
That's a really big difference when one's selling everything you have and taking off and seeing the world, not any fixed address or fixed home, and the other was more of a homebody, and maybe a trip or two a year was what she had in mind, and he had in mind, 365 days a year, and maybe your most permanent stops are maybe your parents or your kids, and those are only for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. That's a big difference, and if you have that big a difference in your plan, it's going to be different to try to reconcile that and work it all out. I think he gave up on the Winnebago eventually, and so I ended up doing driving vacations and doing hotels, which is a big difference from a Winnebago where you're
It's true,
living in
but life is about compromise. Definitely marriage is.
Yeah, marriage is definitely a compromise. And another example would be if one person wants a house at the beach and the other wants no parts of the beach. That we have that happen a fair amount because a lot of people have an idealized version of life at the shore, and nothing wrong with that. Some people want it as a permanent residence. Some people want it as just a place to go in the summer. But you got to have the same ideas when you get started. So some of the first things that we start to look. Oh, by the way, again, if you want to call in, if you have any questions about your personal financial plan,
Or have any comments.
or how to put it together. If you have any comments or questions or have a better way to do it, we're absolutely open. Our number here, 717-540-0580 or 800-724-5801. And again, we have the Panera card if you call in for $10. But the first thing we start with are people's birthdays, which sounds straightforward. Well, I guess first thing we really start with is their history. How did you get to where you are? What are your dreams? And then we start to get down to the nuts and bolts, which is getting more detailed information on people. Some of it feels like it's invasive, but in general, you want to get a sense for where people want to go, particularly in retirement and particularly when you're putting together a financial plan.
Mm-hmm. So that is one thing I do want to point out. When you go see a financial advisor and they ask how much you have in cash and savings, that doesn't mean that they are trying to get their hands on the cash and savings. It means that we need to know that you have a realistic and healthy emergency fund that is somewhere that is easily accessible to you and is safe. I have quotes around my safe because,
safe, yeah.
They always have some type of risk around anything, but you know what I mean, something that is relatively stable and easily accessible. We always recommend 3 to 6 months. There are people who don't feel quite comfortable with that number, so sometimes people just choose a number. Whether it's 20 or 50,
of some
don't
percent of a year's
recommend,
expense.
yeah, we don't recommend you get too high, but
But people
whatever
that have
you
zero,
have to have for your comfort level, we want to make sure that you have that somewhere stable and accessible in case of emergency, maybe not too accessible if you are the person who dips into your emergency savings often.
well, and nobody's actually comfortable with a zero. You know,
Yeah.
when we talk to people that have like $1,000 in savings and checking, one of the first things that we do is try to figure out a strategy to build up their safety net. You never want to get it, particularly if you own your home or even if you don't. But if you own your home, some of the big things that can happen are a leak in your roof, furnace goes out, air conditioning, appliances go out, car breaks down in a big way. You know, maybe the motor goes or whatever it turns out to be. But you want to have enough money in a safety net that covers the things that can really, that are bad that can happen. You know, potentially losing your job or having a break in your production because you're off for a surgery or something like that. A safety net is really important. And to Megan's point, when you meet with a financial advisor, the first thing is they shouldn't just be trying to find out your invested assets so they can take those over and manage them. You want them to be interested in your financial life and your financial concern. You may have one specific account that you want them to look at, but in our world, we try to do a holistic view, look at the person's overall financial situation before we make a financial recommendation. Because if you don't know how people are situated and what their overall situation is, you can't really make an appropriate recommendation. And this is me. I think when you have multiple advisors, I think you're asking for conflicts in advice. Pairing two advisors up and saying, okay, whoever wins in 6 months is the one I'm going to use, I don't think that's an appropriate way to do it. I think you should, if you want to meet with multiple financial advisors to try to find somebody you're comfortable with working with, I think you should do that. But if you have two advisors, and unless you have a high-level plan that you're working from, you want to make sure that your plan is working all combined and all structured towards achievement of your goals, and not have one financial advisor trying to achieve his goals, the other financial advisor trying to achieve his goals, when they may be a conflict with your overall intent of the money. So.
Absolutely. And so there are a lot of questions that we have to ask, a lot of delving. We do a lot of talking about budgets and things of that nature as well. And again, that's not something that we would be judgmental about or anything like that. This is just all information that we have to gather in order to make sure that you're comfortable. And a budget can sound strict. We have people whose monthly budgets vary greatly. There's no correct answer. That's why there's no right amount of money to have when you retire. We have people who have retired and have a wonderful retirement with not very much money set aside.
We have people living with Social Security and a small pension or a small amount of invested assets and perfectly happy with life. But
yeah, it has to fit what your goals are and how you enjoy your life. If you are expecting to travel the world, your budget's going to look a lot different than someone who enjoys staying at home and fishing in their boat out back.
Yeah, golf's a little expensive, but if you get a membership to a course and you know what your fixed cost is for golf, except for balls and whatever the accessories are. But that's why the question of is $1 million enough? Not really an appropriate question. If you're spending $100,000 a year, it's probably not enough because that's 10 years worth of money if you haven't made any money on your investments. However, if you have $1 million and you're spending $20,000 a year, you've got a huge amount of excess within your budget and probably can do more things and have a bigger budget than $20,000 a year. But it's all very unique to the person. Everybody's got their own way of living, their own lifestyle, and their own plans for retirement. So, again, we usually start with trying to define what it is they want to accomplish in retirement. And then we sit down and start to work at the nuts and bolts. We start with where people worked, what their ages are, how much they currently make. A lot of times when we do a plan, we'll ask people to bring, before people meet, we try to get some information ahead of time, which includes like something like the first 2 pages of their tax return, any investment accounts that they have, the value of their savings and checking, whether or not they have life insurance,
Social Security estimates,
anything else that they feel is important to the development of their personal financial plan. And typically, while we're getting that information, we ask them to put together information on what they think their retirement budget would be if we're putting together a retirement plan. because that's really a critical number to figure out if you have the assets to support the lifestyle you're hoping for in retirement.
Absolutely. And sometimes people think of it as a really cut and dry thing, but we count on inflation affecting your assets. And so we need to be outpacing inflation and hopefully earning more than inflation. And we want to make sure that, if your expenses right now are $45,000 a year, that next year you would have $45,000 plus 3%. And just to make sure that you have the ability to take pay raises as you need them, because the cost of goods will go up.
The cost of things go up over time. So when we do plans, and different advisors do this different ways, we do things in today's dollars and then behind the scenes grow them for inflation, the value of what or the return that you're going to potentially get on investments, the growth of Social Security, which we don't know exactly what it is now. Lately, we've been breaking out health care as a separate line item, because if you retire before 62, especially, or before 65, especially before Medicare, you've got to take into account somehow getting health care from somewhere, and it's getting expensive and it's unidentified. Right now, we don't know what's going to happen with health care. Anyway, we'll get back to a little more detail on that after the break. This is Dave Weaver and Megan Wall with User Friendly Finance and SWC Wealth Management. Give us a call at 540-0580 or 800-724-5801.
I really like the tunes
I
today.
do like the way. What's going on, Art? We're doing great with the music this morning. It's a great way to start on a Sunday morning for sure. We're talking about the subject of trying to put together your own personal financial plan. We sort of talked about the high level things of getting started, so we're about ready to get started. I just want to mention our contact information again, like I said at the break, 706-0700 if you want to give us a call. You can reach us via the web at swcwealth.com, or you can stop by and see us at one of our offices. Typically, it's better to make an appointment because we're really pretty busy during most of the working day, but at 103 West Main Street in Palmyra or 35 East High Street in Carlisle. It's myself, Megan Wall, and Tom Pop are the three advisors, and we can deal with just about any financial issue you might have and help you put together your personal financial plan. And like we always say in our meetings, if you don't want to use us, that's totally fine, but try to find a financial advisor that you trust and want to work with to work on your personal financial plan. So how do we get started? The first thing we do is try to figure out, like I said, we ask people to put together a list of their assets and usually a copy of their tax return. We'll go do a little bit of analysis on that, and then we'll have people come in and talk about the processes like that we just talked about, which is what are the things you envision for your retirement? How old are you? Is it very important? And then we get into the discussion of when is it that you actually want to retire? And again, this is one of those things where a husband and wife, in this case, they don't actually have to agree on the same number for the other person, but they have to agree on the numbers for both people somehow. And they don't have to be the same age. They don't have to be the same time. Different couples, things work differently for different couples. I think my wife is probably planning on retiring a little bit before me. And we have a plan over time where we're going to try to make that happen for her to retire. I probably am not going to retire for quite a while. I like working, but we'll see how that all goes. Megan's probably is younger, so I don't know if you've got your plan for retirement or if you've just.
No, I mean I have a plan for
saving. Plan for a living and saving for retirement.
I've been saving for retirement, but as far as when that actually can occur, I think there'll be a lot of changes before I can make that decision. I can say
got a long time
my husband and I just say that 70 is probably our goal, but who knows what 70 will look like when we get to 70. Health and a million things can make that. 70 can be really young or 70 could be really old. We don't know.
Yeah, it depends on your own circumstance. And, people are still, at this point, people are still living longer, getting the ability to have a longer life is still out there. Right now, in good health at your age, your life expectancy is 95 for women, 93 for men for the top 20% of the population. So you have about another 60 years that the money has to, be accumulated and then be distributed over your lifetime. So anyway, so we start with retirement age. And again, this is a conversation that you want to make sure that you've thought about. 62 to 65 is a big difference. That's typically the ages that people decide to go. Sometimes normal retirement age. Embedded in all that is the discussion of Social Security. But
I think a lot of our people come in thinking that they want to retire. They want to see that they can retire as early as possible. But then when they actually get to that date, sometimes they're like, oh, I'll just go a little bit longer. But we've had the opposite happen where people thought they needed to work for a really long time. And we're like, well, actually, given your expenses, if today you wanted to do it, you can do it.
Or if a year from now, you can do it when they thought maybe it was 5 years from now. The Social Security discussion we'll get to in a little bit, but Social Security, when and whether you take Social Security is a big adjustment or a big part of a lot of people's plans. It's now, it wasn't intended to be this way, but Social Security has now become the floor for people's Social Security. And if you tack on that a pension, if you got a pension from a prior work experience or from your current job, that's the next layer. And then a third layer is the amount of money that you can get from your own investments, whether it be an annuity with some type of guarantee or just the investments that you have and the income that they can generate. So that's kind of the layering that you do. But all that comes into play as you try to figure out when you can retire. And in our plans, what we do is talk about an ideal and acceptable. An ideal is when you really would like to go, and acceptable is when you'd be okay if that was how long you had to wait. And sometimes that's a 1 year difference. Sometimes it's a 3 or 4 year difference. A lot of people, like Megan said, I don't know how many times we have this discussion. People will say, well, I'd like to go right now. And a lot of times that's not totally practical. We have had circumstances where it was, but in general, it's probably not the average situation for most people.
Yeah.
So you have to think about it. And money comes into play when you do that. It's not as simple as, okay, I want to retire and stop working, and all the money that you were making keeps flowing through. That's not what happens. Your work income stops, and the money has to come from somewhere to support whatever lifestyle you have.
Yeah, and Social Security is not meant to replace your full income. So when you figure out what your estimate is, that will help you decide. And Social Security, I think, is a really personal question for a lot of people. When I do a plan and someone gives me no input on Social Security, I often put it in at full retirement age because we're planning on you living a very long life. So that is going to be the best case scenario if you live until 95 is that you waited until you were 70. But a lot of people aren't going to do that, whether we project it or not. So we try to get a feeling of how you feel about Social Security, because we have people who are 62 no matter what, Social Security kind of people. We have people who say, I'm waiting until 70 because there's people who are 103 in my family. So we want to get an idea of how you feel. I can show you behind the scenes what that looks like. So, if you took your Social Security at this age, Social Security goes up by this amount each year, and you live to this age, you ended up getting more or less money than a different age. I can show you all of those numbers. We do those reports, but at the end of the day, some people really have decided this is how I feel about Social Security, and this is when I want to take it.
And Social Security, again, becomes important because it's like the floor of a lot of people's income. So we almost always get into a little bit of a general discussion about Social Security, just as people talk about what age they want to retire. You can retire. You can start taking Social Security as early as 62. For every month that you defer past that, it goes up about 0.5%. About 6% a year. And then once you turn your normal retirement age, which is varying for different people, I don't know if everybody's aware of that, but the younger you are, the longer your normal distribution rate or your normal retirement age is. Mine, I think, is 66 and 4 months, and yours, I think, is 67, Megan. I'm not positive, but I think it's definitely a longer period of time than mine.
It has to be at least that, because we've met with people recently in their mid-50s, and they're at 67. So
yeah. So the age of normal retirement goes up. The difference between 62 and your normal retirement age, whether it's 66 or 67, whatever that range is, from 62 to 66, you're limited to how much you can earn, to right now around $15,000, a little bit more than that. Once you hit the normal retirement age, whatever that is for you, then you can earn as much as you want. And the benefit that you get caps at age 70. So it goes up a little bit every month for every month you delay, caps at age 70. However, if you still keep working past 70 and you're contributing, potentially can go up just a little bit, because when they calculate your benefit, they use the average of your top 35 years of income. So you're only going to be incrementally changing that unless you're making a lot more in retirement. But you could be dropping some of your lower earning years. as you continue to work.
So that is important to note, because some people are like, why am I still paying in if I can't get a raise? But you can get a raise.
Yeah, a little bit of a raise, yeah.
Yeah, even if you continue working and started at 70. We have had people, too, that we are twisting their arm, making them take their Social Security at age 70, because that is when it caps. It won't get any higher after that.
Yeah, some people aren't, well, the whole decision about Social Security becomes very personal. And some people, if you've had a personal experience where somebody retired, started taking Social Security and died the next month, that if you're the spouse of that person, it has a huge impact on your thought process about Social Security and the money that you feel you're entitled to. You've worked your whole life. You've contributed to the plan. Some people want to make sure that they get that money, and as a result, they retire early. Financially, from a number standpoint, if you defer taking your distribution or your Social Security payment until you're 70, and you live a long time, typically more than 13 or 14 years to around age 78, if you live past 78, then generally you're better waiting. So with that, I guess we'll take another break. We're still early on in the financial planning process, but if you have any questions, give us a call at 717-540-0580 or 800-724-5801. This is Dave Weaver and Megan Wall with User Friendly Finance. Yes, Dave Weaver and Megan Wall back again with User Friendly Finance and SWC Wealth Management, talking about the financial planning process for putting together a retirement plan, the process we go through anyway. And it's always, I love that whole part of the process. I like hearing people try to decipher their vision for what their retirement is. And I like to try to prod people who don't really have a good, clear vision of it. You work your entire life for that time. You want to make it a time that is a good end goal. And it makes me sad when people just retire and watch television. You know, television was there the whole time. Maybe that is what they would have done their whole life. I don't know. But there's a lot of stuff to do out there. There's a lot of things in the world.
It's true. And that's one of the most important aspects is, we talk about, okay, how much income do you need each year? What age are you going to be when you retire? And then it comes down to what those goals are. What does your retirement look like? And it may sound touchy-feely, but if it's just about the dollars, then you don't buy into the plan the same way that if it is about the time that you're spending with your family or the time that you're seeing some wonderful thing that you never got to see before in your life.
Those are
those are the things you're saving money for, not just to keep a roof over your head, although that's also very important.
Right.
But you want to be saving for something that you value and cherish.
Yeah, so the next thing, we talked a little bit about this before, but retirement spending is a really important aspect. And a lot of times we'll have people go back to the budget of, like a general financial planning rule of thumb is maybe in the neighborhood of 70 to 75% of your spending when you're working. Some people say that's not what I want. I want to have the exact same money as I have today. Some people realize that it's going to be less and they plan on slowing down a little bit, different lifestyle. Other people are, plan a go-go retirement and they've got different needs and maybe their expenses are actually more.
And we do use after-tax dollars when we are calculating this. So we're not anticipating that you're going to figure out what tax bracket you're going to be in and how much you need to be withdrawing to net out to what your expenses are.
Yeah, you want to make them, ultimately in the end, you want to have as much money in your pocket as you can, as little in the government as you can legally do and legitimately do. And you want to be able to spend the money that you have in a way that's geared toward your retirement goals are. So retirement spending is very important. A lot of times if people haven't given a lot of thought, we'll give a budget sheet so that they actually put numbers together rather than just guess and say, well, I need $4,000 a month or whatever the number is. Actually take a look at your own numbers and see what's a workable number for you. Roughly, if somebody is retired, doesn't have a mortgage, your baseline expenses might be in the neighborhood of $35,000 or so. Single might be around 30, just roughly. If you have real estate taxes and food and gas and nothing really extravagant, those are like rough ballpark numbers as a starting point. So if you don't have a big retirement plan, maybe that's a sufficient income, and maybe Social Security is close to getting you there, or maybe not. So that's where the planning part comes into play. Another big aspect that a lot of people don't think about, or maybe they have but haven't really given concreteness to it, is whether or not you want to leave an estate goal An estate goal, when we talk about an estate goal, is there a specific amount of money we want to leave to a specific person or to a charity or some way of passing money beyond when you pass away? In our plans, we use the ages 95 for men, 95 for women, 93 for men as our standard plan, which is 20%. The average top 20% of the population lives that long. So there's a possibility that you will live that long if you're in good health at almost whatever age you're at. So once you get past that point and you've passed, do you want to leave like $100,000 to each kid or $10,000 to each kid or college funds for the grandkids or the Catholic Church or whatever church it is or charity is that you want to donate money to?
Yeah, and there's no right answer. Some people have no estate goals. Some people have lofty estate goals. It completely depends on what your vision is. You worked hard, you saved the money. Our goal is just to get it where you want it to go.
Yeah, and we can't define it for people. You have to define it for yourself. And, some people who have been helping their kids, for a big part of the growing up of those kids, subsidizing houses, subsidizing emergencies for the kids when they came up.
Helping pay for college.
They may say, look, I've done everything that I wanted to do for my kids. Now the money is for me. Other people say, well, I'd like to give my kids a legacy. I've worked hard. I want to pass some of this money on, and I want to fund college for the grandkids. Or it could be anything. Whatever it is that you want to have happen with your money after you pass. If once you accommodate whatever cost it is for your funeral, a lot of times people will have assets left over. And in our plans, we don't assume people sell their home at the end of the plan. We assume they keep their home for the duration of their lifetime. For people that are very worried about it, we'll accommodate, keeping some money aside for maybe a nursing home if they think that it is something that is potentially there. We don't build it in for everybody's because a lot of people don't intend to go to a nursing home, and not everybody can outrun the cost of a nursing home. But anyway, an estate goal is something that we incorporate into the plan and make sure that it's there if people want to have it. And then if people aren't actually at the age or at the point of retiring, we talk about between now and their retirement age, do they want to increase or decrease the amount that they're currently putting away in savings? Sometimes we will start with that, and let's say somebody's putting in 3% because their employer matches 3%, but they've always been intending to put more in it. We'll ask that.
Now may be the time.
Yeah, now may be the time, but we incorporate that in the plan. But we'll usually start with what they're doing now, and if they decide they want to change, we'll incorporate that. And sometimes after you have all the numbers together in the first pass, people say, well, I think I better increase my savings. Or you say, in order to achieve your goals, you're going to have to do 3% more saving for whatever period of time. Or maybe it's putting together, maybe part of that will be the increase in savings rather than through your company plan might be to build up your safety net. If you've come in without an appropriate safety net and you have $1,000 or $2,000, that's probably not enough for the average emergency that's going to come up in your household.
Yeah, especially if you own your own home. And I know, I don't drive the most expensive cars, and even, taking our truck to get fixed, sometimes that can cost $1,000 when a light turned on and you didn't know there was anything big going on.
Electrical problem. It could be anything.
Yeah. So those are things that you want to have, even though it still hurts when that emergency comes up and you use it. You saved it for a reason, and you try to build that back up.
And in our house, as an example, appliances don't go out by ones. It seems like they always go out in pairs. A washer will go out, then a refrigerator, or all of a sudden you're talking about a couple $1,000s. And if you don't have some amount of money put aside, then you may have to put that on credit. You don't really want to build up credit card debt. And that's another thing, by the way. If you do have credit card debt, we typically want to know that, or loans that you have outstanding, so that they are incorporated in the plan as well. What you're paying towards them and when they're going to be paid off.
Absolutely. And there
part
are times,
of the budgeting.
Yeah, and part of that is, we may figure out, these are things that are worth keeping, and these are things that we need to pay off now and maybe get rid of.
The evaluation of credit card debt. What's the highest and best use of your money? If you have a 20% credit card, you probably are better off paying that than investing, at least for some amount of money. Maybe you do both, but credit cards are kind of insidious. We've talked about it before. You get that appliance breakdown, you buy a new appliance for $2,000, and the next thing you know, you're buying your TV goes out, so now you put a TV on. Now you're at $5,000 or whatever the amount of money is. And before you know it, it's out of control. You can't pay the minimum payment. Paying the minimum pays you back in 14 years or whatever the heck it is, depending on the credit card. So debt management is something that really gets important as you go into retirement. People that have built up credit card debt and you want to pay that off before retirement, I always worry about them contracting additional credit card debt in retirement. So a lot of times we'll have a talk about debt and the fact that you want to manage it even more carefully in retirement than you do before, because you don't have a growing source of income. You generally have a fixed amount or slightly increasing retirement income depending on your plan.
Yeah, and a lot of people have like the goal of paying off their house, but they allow debt to accumulate other places. In general, your mortgage is going to be the lowest interest rate that you have. So maybe rather than rushing to pay off your mortgage, you make sure that you are paying off any other debt that you have.
Yeah, the high credit card debt that you have.
And then once it's paid off, you stick it in the freezer or whatever you need to
Stick
do
it in
to
the
make
freezer.
it.
Is that what you do with your credit card?
No, I don't have one.
Oh,
but
right.
they had one that was frozen in the block of ice.
Right.
I think that was on a sitcom at some point.
Using credit cards can be a bad problem if you can't get it under control. So anyway, we didn't get all the way through our discussion of how you put together the financial plan. In fact, we're just still at the preliminary parts of it before you actually have to go and navigate through and try to get down to a number that's manageable for you. But again, it's important to have a financial plan. I think if you need the help of a financial advisor, they're absolutely out there. Find somebody that you trust, somebody you want to work with, and put together a plan that works for you. This is Dave Weaver and Megan Wall with User Friendly Finance from SWC Wealth Management. Give us a call at 706-0700 or via the web at swcwealth.com.
David Weaver, Megan Wall, and Tom Pop. Securities offered through HD Vest Investment Services, member SIPC. Advisory services offered through HD Vest Advisory Services, 6333 North State Highway 161, 4th floor, Irving, Texas, 75038, 972-870-6000. SWC Wealth Management is not a registered broker-dealer or independent investment advisory firm.